Hey guys, what's going on? This is Pants Our Dragon, and today I just want to be giving some tips on how to play League of Legends when you're behind. Because some people don't realize that the game kind of changes when they're a bit behind, and they gotta adapt to their new, harder environment. So I'll just be giving some tips and strategies to get yourself back in the game. The table of contents in this video will involve for junglers and people who are laning, and just general strategies in the mid game and late game. This video will focus on you as an individual, making choices instead of, your team deciding your fate for you. And so hopefully, this video will help your decision making. And so, with all that being said, let's get started. Okay, so first up, we're going to be doing laning tips. And the first tip we're going to be going over is avoid trades. So obviously you want to avoid trades as much as you can, as you'll probably lose them since you're down an item and maybe down on level. So the enemy is stronger, and if you do trade, well, you'll probably come out on the bad side of that trade. So if the enemy is like zoning you off CS, will you risk, taking harass and going for that CS in a trade, or back off and wait until you can actually get that CS with an auto attack, or however you want to get it. The next tip I want to be giving you guys is let your team carry you. So you might have the mindset where you're the carry and you absolutely must dumpster your lane or the game is over, and you don't realize that your teammates are, maybe actually winning their lanes. And then you might realize that, the game's not all about you. And so the way to let your team carry you is don't die. Like, if you stop feeding, that means your team has an easier chance of carrying you and, winning the game. So that's why I tend to play much more passively when I die and I see my other lanes are winning. Next tip, ward when you get an opening. So if you don't ward, you will probably get ganked. Well, you could avoid ganks if you had a ward, but you probably get what I'm saying. So usually what I will do is when I die from a gank, I'll probably buy a ward, since the jungler is the reason why I died, so I want to prevent that from happening again. Now, talking about ward timing, it's usually when you push the lane into your enemy, and that's when you go to your sides and ward out or go for a gank. You can also just ward out over the wall by your tower if you're feeling unsafe, and something I don't recommend is trying to harass your enemy under the tower, because that's only done if you actually have lane control and you also have the vision to protect yourself. Otherwise, you're making a risky move and an easy gank. And next up, we want to build defensively. So usually when you're behind and you build defensively, you'll eventually win that lane, since resist might negate damage. And you have base damage, so that'll outscale their damage. So for instance, let's say you're playing Twisted Fate and you're facing a Lux. If you aren't confident enough that you'll dodge her skill shots, you might want to consider getting an Abyssal Scepter, since that'll make the laning phase much more easier, and it's usable with your kit. But you also have to consider if the enemy has a bunch of magic damage on their team besides Lux. If not, for instance, there was a Pantheon Aurelia in this game, you may not want to buy this item. The next tip I'm going to be giving is try to play under your tower as much as possible. This is the safest area to play around, as there's a very low chance of dying. This way, the only way you're going to probably die is get tower dove or somehow having a play being made on you. The enemy's minions will eventually push into you and you'll get the CS, so there's no reason for you to go out there and getting harassed or potentially dying somehow. You kind of give up some of the map pressure because the enemy has you kind of pinned down. You kind of give up a little bit of map pressure because the enemy mid laner has you pinned down and can potentially be roaming through other lanes. And also, if the enemy has somewhat pressure on you and is winning the lane, but the enemy jungler is not around the area, then of course it's safe to say that you can go out there and get some CS. Next up, obviously you don't have to play bitch all the time. You can actually go out there and poke the enemy if you can win that trade, or they can't poke you back. So basically go for smart trades and try and outplay the enemy, or sit back and try and get some farm. Now this is not a smart trade because, well, if she did hit that Q, it'd probably be dead. And also I didn't know where the enemy jungler was. I was just simply lucky and dodging her Q, and also getting the Storm Raider's surge buff, which probably did prevent that gank from happening. And next tip, wait until you build resist against them if you're a tank. So this is basically the same tip I gave before, but I'm going to be going a little bit more in depth. So usually when I'm losing like this, I kind of just deal with it and try and farm as best as I can, but once I come back with some items, I can probably win the lane at that point, since I do have the resist to counter him. So once you get those items, you can definitely play aggressive and beat his ass up. For the next tip, what you want to do when you're behind is wait for those ganks. Maybe your jungler notices that the enemy is playing really aggressive and up in your tower, so that could be a free kill for him. So just notify your jungler the enemy is playing really aggressive, going in for those trades and pushing up to your tower. But if this is your off roll, don't say it's a kill, because the jungler probably has better experience when determining if it is a kill or not. But spewing out information like that, and if he has wards or not, definitely helps the jungler when making this decision to gank or not. Next tip, avoid harassment of any kind. No, not those Jehovah's Witnesses that come to your door and are very pushy for you to join them. The harassment coming from your enemy. I already kind of said this, but let's go a bit more in depth. So obviously you want to avoid trading, and sometimes enemy will zone you off CS and will contest you for one creep. You have to make a choice. Do I take that CS and the harass, or do I not get the CS and take no damage and maybe a bit of the enemy's mana? Like, good mid laners and top laners will probably contest you on every CS, as they know your most vulnerable point is when you're auto attacking the minion, since you basically stand still when you're auto attacking. Next tip, buy pots. So they're kind of expensive in this patch. They do cost 50 gold, but they're still worth it because they'll let you live in lane forever and ever. As long as you can survive in lane, well, you'll probably have an easier time just staying alive. So yeah, potions are your friends. And for the final tip, you can go CS when their skills are down. So obviously, since they have no skills up, how can they harass you? Like, you have a good window for about 8 seconds until it's back up, but you'll instinctively make use of that time and try and grab the CS of what you can, or go for the harass on the enemy. Either way, knowing that their cooldowns are down can definitely give you some breathing room and giving you an opening. And as you can see, most of these tips are pointing to one thing: don't die. So to simply put up the laning tips, don't die. Next up, we're going to be talking about the jungle and how to play behind when you're jungling. And we'll be featuring the jungle devour Kennen jungle. Ooh, that's pretty interesting. But first tip, avoid the enemy jungler. The enemy is probably stronger than you, so don't go into his jungle and expect to kick his ass. If he is in an area that you kind of want to go into, back out of that area, because you probably can't contest whatever is in that area, like the Wraith camp, and it can lead into things like taking a lot of damage or just dying up in the enemy's jungle. And then, like the laning phase, build defensively. So a good example of this would be Rek'Sai. Rek'Sai is known to go Cinderhulk or Warrior depending on how she is doing, and a good deciding factor for me at least is I will go Cinderhulk if I'm not snowballing and I don't have 2 kills on me. If the game is even and maybe I have like 1 kill or 0 kills, 0 assists and the game is even, I'll probably go Cinderhulk. It's all pretty situational, so yeah, usually if you're behind, probably want to build tanky and resist against enemy. Next up, when you're behind, farm up until you are comfortable in power. So usually when you have a couple of deaths, you will probably be behind in terms of levels comparison with the enemy jungler. And so the safest way to catch up to the enemy jungler is just to farm up your jungle as much as you can. Obviously you can still go for those ganks, but you're much weaker than you were before. So unless your laner has the power, don't expect too much from yourself in terms of doing damage and finishing the enemy off. And also usually when you're behind, you want to avoid 2v2s. 2v2s probably won't go your way. You're behind, you're down in levels, you're down in items, so you'll much likely lose these 2v2s. And that's why ganking can actually be scary. If the enemy counter ganks or you try to counter gank the enemy jungler, it might not go so well in your favor and you might be just ending up giving more kills to the enemy team. And I guess that's why you shouldn't be playing so aggressive. It can lead to unhappy endings. And next up is going to be avoiding the enemy's jungle. So like the very first tip of our jungle tips, we'll be going a bit more in depth in this. So the reason why you actually avoid the enemy's jungle is because it's his territory, blah blah blah, I already said this. But since the enemy has a lead, they'll probably have wards around the map, more than you think. And so they can probably see you entering their jungle and then collapse on you and probably kill you. So unless you're like really sure that you probably won't die when you're going to counter jungle the enemy, I'd avoid the enemy's jungle. And of course, if you can find a 2v1 or EXCELLENTE ganks where the enemy is not coming for them, then go for it. There's nothing wrong with getting yourself back in the game, but you kind of have to be a bit more, cautious about these decisions and make sure they're actually not coming in with a counter gank and where the enemy's jungler is. And next up, you want to support the winning lanes. So you know that tip I gave to the laners about letting your team carry you? Well, as a jungler, you can actually support them in carrying your ass by giving them wards, giving them jungle support, ganking the lane often, and just being around the area if anything happens. Things like this will definitely help your carries snowball the game, and hopefully grabbing that easy elo for you. And next up, don't do the dragon early. It doesn't really give a lot of experience points, and by early game I mean like levels 1 to 5, so if you're a jungler who can actually do it pretty early, you will actually be putting yourself behind but giving your team an advantage in more of the mid game, of course. But you'll probably be down 1 or 2 levels on the enemy jungler, so you won't have that early game pressure. And next hit, buy the wards or tracker's knife. So just getting wards for your team definitely helps them, gives your team a bit more map control, and of course gives them protection from any kind of gank. As a jungler who is behind, you won't really need the Stalker's Blade or the Skirmisher's Saber, because since you aren't snowballing and making aggressive moves, you won't be using these smites offensively, and you'll be playing more passively, so it's better for you to just, help your team and play that support role. Finally, we'll be doing general tips for mid game. This is going to be the last part, so bear with me here. And so for the very first tip, it's going to be a very simple one: fight with a numbers advantage. So 5v4s, all in your favor. This is a good way to come back and if you see like an Aurelia top, ooh, go for it. You just might be able to get that pick onto the enemy team and get yourself back in the game. Next up will be letting an enemy team dragon. There have been so many times in lower elos where a team tried to contest the dragon even though they were considerably weaker than the enemy team, and what would end up happening is they would get aced and giving up another 5 kills plus dragons to the enemy team. Now, if you guys didn't know, the important dragons are dragon number 1 and dragon number 3. Number 2 and number 4 don't really count, they suck, but obviously you have to contest dragon number 5 every time, otherwise the enemy team has big boosts on their stats and, true damage. And then you just gotta wait until the enemy throws. So in this throw, I feel like the enemy was pushing too hard after pushing out mid tower because they went for the top tower and they kind of forgot that Twisted Fate was in the game. So they were pushing pretty hard with relatively low healths, and that's an easy opportunity for Twisted Fate to come in the game and get some picks for him and a comeback. Some other common throws would be turret diving when they can't really do that and your team just kites them, and basically the turret's just wailing on them or zoning off some teammates of the enemy. And the next tip will be stalling out the game. So this is kind of hard, but there are many ways to do this. For instance, wave clearing. Wave clearing definitely stalls out the game as they can't really push towers if they have no minion, so you can just sit back, kill the minions, and well, they can't get a tower, usually. And next up will be split pushing and pushing waves. So split pushing or pushing waves definitely attracts a lot of attention. Doing this will either have two things happen: have the enemy come on a wild goose chase and send a bunch of members to kill you, and obviously you don't want to die because that's actually better for the enemy team, but if you have the vision to just kind of back out after pushing the wave, they kind of have to send someone to deal with that wave and then, basically still end the game. And then go for picks if you have a good pick comp. Getting picks can definitely get you a comeback into the game. So if you see someone kind of out of position and you're grouped up and you can kill them, go for it. Pick comps and assassins like Rengar and Twisted Fate can definitely make a move onto the enemy, and the enemy can't really do anything if they're down a member and you can fight them 5v4. And of course, warding up will help since you can see where the enemy is going, what their next move is, and you can plan out yourself what you should be doing to counter their movement. And next up is going to be, if the enemy has Baron, you're probably gonna drop some objectives, especially the inner turrets, because they drop fairly quickly now and minions do get a pretty good buff. So it's not hard for the enemy to knock these towers down, and you're just gonna tell your team to back away from towers since it is kind of uncontestable. Although the inhibitor turrets, yeah, those are the things you gotta protect, since you don't want the enemy getting a free inhibitor. And yeah, that is it for this video. I hope you guys enjoyed it. Let me know what you guys thought about this videos and whatever ideas you kind of want me to do a video on in the comments below. And also if this video actually did kind of help you get some insight on how to play behind, because that's definitely what I want to see, if this guide is actually helping people or not. And yeah, if you want to support my channel and you enjoyed this video, or this video actually did help you, definitely give this video a thumbs up. But if you didn't like it for whatever reason, then yeah, give it a dislike. Anyways, thank you guys for watching this video. I hope you guys enjoyed it. I'm Panzer Dragon, and I'll see you guys next time.